Yes. In progress. Thank you for the reminder, John.
Okay, great. And, so we have a, smaller group, so we can just take questions along the way if folks have questions and make it as interactive as folks want to make it. But I have a presentation, and I also have some live demos that we'll do to show a couple things. So I'm going to go into the presentation now, and yeah, like I said, if you've got a question at any time, you can just pop in and ask it. But as was mentioned earlier, this is developed by Climate Interactive in partnership with MIT Sustainability Initiative. So some of the brightest in this space have done this. I've introduced myself already, so we'll just kind of move along from that. But we're going to talk about basically an introduction, some scenarios of like what success looks like. I want to talk about impacts as well. It's one of the really interesting areas. It's not just a climate simulation model, but it also talks about some of the impacts. And what I'd like to get out of this is to give you some tools for you to talk to, leaders in your community or leaders in Congress, to help them to help you advance kind of, the changes that we need to to leave a livable world, if you will. But this tool has a couple of different ways to be used in terms of that. So so think about in terms of how you might use this in your role as a volunteer at CCL to either educate people or to talk about specific policies that are being considered. So let's jump into about En-ROADS. So it's a simulation tool. It's built to be fast and powerful. So it's got a user interface that's very responsive. So these are basically aggregating some of the world's most advanced and accurate climate models and putting it into an aggregated model that acts very quickly. It's so that we can, look at different scenarios and see what have the greatest impact. It's a global model, so that's something to just keep in mind every time we talk about this and show it to another, constituent or a leader, is that the policies that we're going to simulate here, the simulator acts as if we were the legislatures of the world and we could enact the policies globally. So we know that that's not real, but what it does do is it allows us to determine, well, what are the most effective policies? Because, and again, the global nature of it allows it to be simple and fast. If we had to segment it by administrative boundaries, that would make this, it wouldn't be as responsive. It would be rather complex. So it is a good model, or I guess tool to compare different models to see what are most effective. And so, yeah, so that makes it great for communication, presentation, and analysis, other discussions as well. It's transparent, so all the equations and the structures and the assumptions that are built into the model, they're all in the tool, and I'll demonstrate that in a few minutes. It's really flexible. It's almost any major policy that's been talked about is somehow modeled in this tool. And like I said, it's highly aggregated to be really fast. It does not supplant other models, it complements them. So it's kind of the combination of other models, if you will. And it's really, it's the ground discussions, it's to learn, it's to strategize and go from there. But yeah, so that's what the tool will look like. I'll dive into that in a moment. But let's briefly review the science. And I think everyone here is probably familiar with some of the science, but this is the carbon dioxide levels over the last 800,000 years. And you can see it jumps up between about 180 to about 280, up and down in cycles. Those cycles would be the glacial cycles. So when the carbon dioxide level is at its lower point, that's when we have an ice age. When it's at the higher point, that's when we have, well, now the warm times, and the times where there's less ice on the Earth. And I'm going to take a pivot here for just a minute, and try something new. Can you see my browser screen right now, or still the presentation, the browser? So I do want to just talk about global population. This is just an interesting thing. Going back 10,000 years, which is when humans started to do agriculture. So Homo sapiens have been around for like 300,000 years, or yeah, roughly, or so. And for the last 10,000 or 10,000 years ago, there was 2 million people on the planet. So before that, it was before agriculture. It was hunters and gatherers, and the population of Homo sapiens didn't grow. But what agriculture allowed was for the storage of energy, because food is energy. And so population started to grow from 10,000 years ago, or from when we started agriculture. And you can see it's jumping up, not tremendously, but it's growing. And then something happened right around 17, late 1700s into the 1800s, around 1700, 1750, something dramatic happened. And what that correlates nicely to, of course, is the CO2 in the atmosphere, which is, us taking stored energy and using that energy. So the population growth tracks greatly with the fact that we are taking energy that's been stored in the earth for millennia and burning it for growing food, growing population. So the emissions by source, it's coal, oil, natural gas, land use change. So that's deforestation and things like that. And there's some of that in the tool. And then others, which would be the F gases and other things like that. And you can see that, here they are here listed up in terms of the annual emissions by gas. And like I said, it all tracks back to that change in that path of human population growth, which was we were able to expand because we could store energy, we could have more people. And then the global temperature change from pre-industrial times has grown along with that growth in CO2 emissions in the planet. And then we have our scientifically established goals to limit the warming of the planet to 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius. And we think we're somewhere right now in the 1.1 range, I think, 1 to 1.2. So we're really coming close to the 1.5 threshold. And and these thresholds, of course, don't mean that if we hit them we win. It just means if we hit them, we've reduced the negative impacts of climate change and what it'll do to our environment. Because I guess I'm going to relate back to the agriculture comment for just a little bit, but agriculture stored energy and all that, but the places where that we grow our food are all determined by the climate. The climate's been stable for those 10,000 years that we've been growing food, and with the change of the rain pattern and the heat pattern, it's going to change where food is grown very quickly, and that's going to cause it's going to have its own disruptions in terms of trying to feed 8 to 10 billion people on Earth. So so let's get into the policy simulator a little bit. These are all of the, I'll go to presentation mode, apologies for that, I'll make it a little bigger. You can see there's different levers. Can you all see the big screen? Oh, yeah, okay. There's different levers that are available to us to try out different policy simulations. Coal, oil, natural gas, which you would think are in there, of course. Renewables, nuclear energy, bioenergy, carbon pricing, which is near and dear to us. And then what's called new technology. And new technology could be fusion, which has been 30 years away since I've been a child, and it's still 30 years away. It's getting closer. No, it's not. It's still 30 years away. Then it's got the energy sector in terms of transportation and buildings. So you can electrify things, you can make them more efficient. You can put policies in to assume higher or lower population growth or economic growth. You can do land use change around deforestation and afforestation. So afforestation is planting trees, deforestation is cutting down trees. And then there's the methane emissions from land use change, and then carbon removal for technological carbon removal is another one as well. And those are a little bit speculative, I guess, at best at this point. They're out there as policy tools that we can do. So let's go into the simulator. So this is what it looks like. This is the current trajectory that we're on, and I will tell you there is good news. This number used to be higher in 2100. It's still obviously way higher than than we need it to be. Again, our goal is to keep it 1.5 to 2. Right now, we're on a trajectory with current policies to hit 3.6. But again, when I was doing this about a year ago, I think that number was closer to 4.1. So there's been some progress in terms of policies that have now changed the trajectory that we're on. So we can do a number of things. There's a number of options. This is in many languages. We can reset all of our policies and assumptions as we change them. There's also buttons on this to do that as well. Let me move this bar out of the way. It's got oh, there we go. Yeah, you can see the reset buttons, the go home buttons, the reset the graphs are here. I can replay, redo or undo any changes, or replay the last change. But so there's a number of different levers that we can pull. So let's look at the graphs. There's a number of different graphs that are available. These are all available in the drop-down menu as well. And I'll show you a few of the more useful ones. And then this is the main graphs. We have what's called the Kaya graphs, which have an, I guess, showing 5 of the key graphs across the top, or we could view miniature graphs, which has all of them. And I'm just going to go in and show you some of the sensitivity of using this tool. So let's try just moving, incentivizing renewables, because we just did that recently. So if we just put a heavy incentive on building new renewables, you can see that we moved the needle. This 3.6 went to 3.4, so that's good. We could try stopping deforestation, and we can plant a whole bunch of trees, and you can see each policy initiative that we do can move the needle. And we'll just go ahead and reset those. Under each of the levers, there's 3 dots, and in the 3 dots you can pull that up and see what's behind those 3 dots. You can see that these are highly configurable. You can do a tax on coal or a subsidy on coal. You can say what year that starts in. You can say what year that stops in. You can do a % in reduction in coal utilization as your policy, and say what year that starts and stops in. So again, there's a number of different policy simulators that you can try in the tool. Over here on the right, you've got the help. This gives examples of some policies that you could model in the tool, and you can just key down all these as well to kind of see all of the different types of models that you can put in play here. And again, we have this for each one, and now I can just do a heavy tax, and you can see immediately what the demand for coal is when I just put $109 per ton tax on coal. You can see what that does to the demand for coal. Okay. All right, so that's what is in every one of these little I guess levers has the description of what can go on and what policies that you can simulate and doing that. And again, thinking in terms of global in nature in terms of what you can do. So with that, let's go ahead and try a couple policies. Who would like to give us, again, our goal is by 2100, we want to get down to at least below 2, if not lower. Who wants to give me a policy to try?
Let's look at electrification of transportation. That's one that seems to maybe moving faster than we think.
Yeah, it's a good one for sure. So if we electrify, so let's first talk about what do you think will happen if we electrify transport? And so transport would be cars, trucks, buses. Yeah, what do you think the impact will be if we electrify that whole sector? or incentivize the electrification of it. Yeah. Mhm.
We expect oil, gas to go down, perhaps.
Yeah.
Coal unaffected because they still have to generate the electricity somehow.
Yeah, that's good thinking. Yeah, absolutely. So, so here we have coal and oil is the, I'm sorry, oil and gas. So let's say oil primarily is what drives transport now. So this red one we would expect to go down, but we would see an overall demand for electricity to go up because we're electrifying them, right? So let's see if that happens. So yeah, interestingly, we did see the red bar go down. Let's replay that. Replay that a few times. So it looks like renewables went up a little bit. Coal went up, actually, the demand for coal, because that's electricity generation. So, yep. So that's good, though. We did move the needle. Temperature went down by 0.2 degrees. So that's a positive. Let's go with another one. Who wants to layer on top of what Dan put in, another policy?
I'd like to reduce methane leaks.
Okay, that's methane and other gases. So we're going to go ahead, and this is a good one here too as well. We're going to go ahead and reduce that. That had a pretty big impact. Methane knocked it from 3.4 to 3.0. Let's replay that one and see what it does. So that's good. We've got rid of the leaks, and that means it didn't really affect the primary energy mix at all because we're just getting rid of leaks. So that's good, but it had a dramatic impact. So that's almost free, right, Beth? It's like we're just eliminating waste, if you will, and we've reduced the temperature of the planet, and that should be good. It should be, like, so a policy around that would be like, I know it's not free, but the companies that would reduce waste would have more natural gas to burn, conceivably, and because they're just wasting their product. But there's there's other ways that, like, land use change and drives some of the emissions as well, for methane. As agriculture practices drive methane emissions as well. So that's kind of big to hear.
This is
And
Teresa, and I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And landfills too.
And landfills, that's right. Yeah,
Yes.
so that would be baked into there as well. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question about under transport energy efficiency. I'm wondering what they mean by that, solely because I would think if you electrify, that would make cars more efficient, but then they also have an energy efficiency under transport itself. So
Yeah, so
Thank you.
increase or decrease the energy efficiency of vehicles, shipping, air
Oh.
travel, and transportation systems.
Okay.
Energy efficiency includes things like hybrid cars, expanded public transport, and ways that people get around using less energy. Adopting more energy efficient practices can improve public health and save money. So it's so you're right, electrifying cars and trucks would absolutely make them more efficient. But this is it looks like from the whole system itself and moving towards more efficient practices as a society. So yeah, that's probably
Okay.
a good, you want to take a look at what that does?
Sure, a little bit then. Can't hurt.
Let's do that. And so you saw what that did. It did move the needle on the temperature,
Yeah.
but it also, it reduced the energy demand by reducing the
Because
waste and energy.
efficiency.
Yep.
Mhm.
So that's good. But we still have a lot of coal going on.
Yeah.
So coal and natural gas, there's a lot of fossil. Again, one of the conclusions we'll get to is, really the only way that we'll get to anywhere near 2 is to get the blue, the red, and the brown lines as close to 0 as possible. Yeah. So we really have to drive the demand for the blue natural gas, the red oil, and the brown coal. If they don't go to near or at 0, we probably aren't going to be able to hit the target. So we should probably spend some time over here in our energy supply as well.
Maybe before we do know, one other
Yeah.
question I would look at is what population does. Since
Sure.
we're reading about China's population growth slowed, and they're the biggest emitter,
Sure.
what happens?
Yeah. So we could put in. Well, I have to look at which way.
See what the status quo is. I don't know.
This is status quo right now. Status quo means the current policies, but we could put in policies that. So you want to restrict population growth, slow it down?
Yeah.
Okay, so we could lowest growth, and it did take a little bit off, but not a whole lot. But yeah, it did, take off a degree, or a tenth of a degree, 2.9 to 2.8. And you saw, let's replay that one. The energy use went down as well. But I will caution that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, tough to do.
Tough to
Right.
do. Yeah, there's a whole lot of different moral and ethical
Oh,
discussions
for
that come into
sure.
play when you start talking about that. And I usually stay away from both that one and economic growth, because I just imagine conversations, and even just in our country, about trying to regulate either one of those. And well, we absolutely regulate economic growth, but always to make it grow. To regulate it, to slow it down would not get a politician would never get reelected if he put out policies that intentionally slowed growth.
Yep. So put population back. That's good.
Yep.
And real quick before we get energy supply, I'm wondering if we can increase electrification, because there's so much
Yeah.
that came out in the IRA. I
Sure.
just figured there might be some. I don't know if you'd increase it all the way.
Look at that. Yeah, big one. Look at that. When you electrify
Mhm.
buildings, did you see what happened with the energy? Let's look at that again.
And that is one of the 4 new pillars of
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah, it's huge.
Right.
Look what it did to oil, because there's a lot of diesel going on
Huh.
in buildings. Yeah, no doubt.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
yeah. So electrification of buildings was huge, and actually efficiency. Would you mind if I did efficiency buildings as well?
Please, yeah.
Because I think that's part of it. Look at that.
Mhm.
Ooh,
It's a huge,
That's-
huge fact.
Yeah.
stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see
Mhm.
but there's another dynamic going here, because we haven't touched energy supply yet. By
Right.
making buildings more efficient, we knock down renewables as well, because there wasn't as much need for electricity, and there's not a disincentive for the fossils.
Right.
Renewables also went down along with everything else, if you notice that. Yeah.
Since
So-
one of the other of the 4 policy focuses of CCL now is on healthy forests.
Yeah.
Maybe we should also test out the afforestation and deforestation.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. So afforestation, I'll move over to about here, because if I move all the way to the right, that means we've planted a tree in every spot that can have a tree everywhere in the world. But I'll move it like way over to the right. And so that had an effect. That knocked a tenth of a degree off, but it didn't really move the energy mix, because this is basically taking carbon out of the air and putting it into the ground naturally, which is awesome. I love it. I work on trees during my day job, and then stopping the cutting down of trees is also part of that. And so we'll move that to the left as well. We got another degree, but again, that didn't change the energy mix. So we're at 2.3. So we've actually made really good progress. And we haven't touched the energy supply yet, but we've done a lot. Like, we've done everything basically to this point. We've electrified everything, buildings and cars, and made them high efficient. We planted trees wherever we could plant a tree, and we stopped this crazy deforestation that's going on in the world. And we made, we stopped all the methane leaks. So that's a lot of really good policy and hard work, but we're still not there.
But you are saying that this we have to do it globally.
Oh yeah, it's global too. Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah. Yep. Mhm. Does anybody want to take a cut at the energy supply?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you got?
Take coal away.
So how would you like to do that? There's a number of levers. All right, so just very highly taxed coal. So there we go. We knocked coal down. We're down to 2.1, and you can see how that moved. Okay. So yeah, coal went down, and we're closer. We still have a lot of natural gas. That stayed fairly steady in this mix as well.
So this is where you have to put in the carbon price, right?
I love carbon price. Let's do it. Whoa, look at that. That one took a hit on the remaining fossil fuels and got us down to 1.7 with everything else.
Can you take off the coal one? And I just want to see what carbon price does on its own, if that's okay too.
Sure, let's.
Because I assume it takes down the coal, but I just want to.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna put carbon price back on. Yeah, it does. Yep. In fact, we just showed that you don't need, if you put the carbon price in, it effectively takes care of coal the same as if you tax coal directly.
Mhm.
It does.
Doesn't one of the graphs, isn't there a graph that shows an impact on prices, cost?
Yeah, we're gonna get into impacts here a second.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, I want to go through a whole series of examples on impacts, and price is one of them. I'm going to do price and health. So yeah, we've solved it. We did it. We put a high carbon price in. We electrified everything. We made everything as efficient as possible. We planted trees. We stopped cutting down trees where we could, and we eliminated methane leaks everywhere. And yeah, that's good work. I mean, 1.7 is not 1.5, but it's pretty good spot. I mean, there's still going to be impacts, I should say, but it's still a livable world if we
I
could do that.
think the IRA has money for new innovations. So what's in the technological?
So let's pull up technological. All right, so pull carbon dioxide out of the air with new technologies that enhance natural removals or manually sequester and store carbon. Carbon dioxide removal include direct air capture, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, tar and others, but not including coal or gas, CCS, which is covered in a different one. So basically it's carbon removal technology, which is, yeah, it's possible as well. And we could possibly put in some of these as well and say, yeah, if we can develop some carbon removal technologies in addition to what we put in place, we could potentially get back to 1.5.
Mhm.
Yeah. So invest in that as well, I think is probably maybe another good answer to say, you know, we really need to move it out, but that's going to, take some time into the future to get that to be effective. You can see that road doesn't take play until later in the century. Yeah. But
where does carbon capture and storage, how is that affected on this model? Or where is it still a technological thing?
it's in the technological, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, the CCS,
Yeah.
I think it's under coal. Here's CCS right here, carbon capture and storage subsidies. We could put that in under coal. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it's possible to model that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, yeah, you can see we can try a number of different scenarios to come up with this. I'm going to reset this, if you will, if that's okay with everyone, and just go into a couple of other things. And let me see. Okay, so I'm just going to put a carbon price from the get-go right off the top, if that was the one policy we did. But just a carbon price by itself brings us a whole degree down, all by itself, which is a pretty powerful. And when we did it after all of the other policies, it wasn't as effective because it does matter which order you put them in. But just by itself, it is the #1 most effective policy, and it moves the needle by an entire degree Celsius just by a high and aggressive carbon price that's put into play. So wanted to highlight that. So now I want to go into the impacts. Oops. So there's two areas in the tool here: the financials, which we talked about, and the impacts. I'm going to talk about. Well, let me do financials first, because I think that might be a faster conversation. So I'm going to talk about the price of electricity and revenue and cost. So what I want to show here is the if I put a high carbon price on, you can see we've gotten some revenue here from the carbon price, but you can see the market price of electricity has gone way up, and it's gone up. Well, actually, I think there's a better. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. The total annual cost of energy is what I wanted to show, and so you can see here this this peak goes so it goes up from about an 11 to 17. It goes up by about $6 trillion a year when it peaks in about, oh, this looks like about 2034 or so. It goes up by about $6 trillion, but at that same time, we've got $7 trillion in revenue. And like the beauty of the tax or the carbon fee and dividend is the revenue generated from the carbon fee is $7.2 trillion according to this model, and the increased cost of energy is only 6 trillion. And so that's the net effect of taking that money, giving it back to the people that need it, who then can pay for the higher cost of energy across all channels of energy. And it kind of proves out that this model or the carbon fee and dividend could help make this transition quickly by not impacting communities, because we're going to give them this money back to pay for the rising cost in energy. So that's kind of one of the financial impacts that this model shows around how effective the carbon fee and dividend. You have to have the dividend piece, or you're going to be driving folks' energy up. And as you know, that's not tenable if you drive energy costs up for folks. Yeah.
The assumption, though, that you're making is that it goes back to the right people.
That's
and
correct.
not
That's correct.
To the companies or some other entity that we don't want it to go to.
It's correct. And that's, yeah, you're exactly right. It would have to go back directly to the people. And they would then be able to make their choices on which energy sources to get. And, but they won't be as impacted by the rising cost of energy as they would have been had we not given them that revenue back. Anyway, just putting that out as one of the kind of interesting views that you can take from, like, the model shows that energy costs go up, but then they level out over time, which is kind of neat. But if we do the whole model, this becomes really interesting. We electrify everything, we make everything efficient, and we do the whole thing that we had before. You can see the really cool thing is when you combine it with energy efficiency and electrification, the actual annual cost of energy goes way down in the future. So you're providing a net benefit, permanent benefit to society by reducing the cost of energy to run their lives by electrifying and making everything efficient, and by pricing out fossil fuels. And again, you can see the price spike up here, but the revenue from that would pay for that. And even here on the break-even point, around 2052 or so, you're still getting trillions of dollars of revenue back from the carbon fee. So you'd even have a net surplus, if you will, to spend on remediation. And I guess, there's still going to be impacts due to, climate change. So, we still have to do resiliency and things like that. So anyway, just a neat way to kind of look at, again, the macro level, global model, looking at how we could do something that works. Does this make sense to folks?
It does. Noel, I have a question. Have you ever presented this in any of the MOC offices?
I presented this in my member of Congress in PA5 has I walked the legislative aid through En-ROADS.
Yeah. Oh, good. I was wondering, does anyone ever asked, is there a way not to get rid of that spike there in total energy cost? Even if you're giving some of that back, is there a way to flatten that out so their constituents don't feel it as much? Just curious.
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible. Basically,
I don't know.
we're putting that in for the purpose of getting rid of fossil fuels. It's like,
Right.
that's why cigarettes are taxed. So
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I didn't
no,
know
I
if they
don't,
ever asked, like, could efficiency go in first and then the tax, or, I just wondered if you've
I
ever
got
heard
you.
any of that,
Mhm.
I
to
think
try to
they
make
all,
it more even.
yeah, they like carrots better than sticks for sure. Like
Yeah.
incentives is
Yeah.
certainly been, so they'd like to, we'll put incentives in place.
Hmm.
Carbon price they want to do, we'll incentivize nuclear. But again, they don't want to put prices on these or disincentivize them. So they don't, bioenergy, they can subsidize bioenergy's got other issues, though. I wouldn't even go that way. So yeah, I mean, you electrify, you do this, you do this, and you do this, but you haven't really solved the problem.
Right.
Because you still have fossil fuels, but yeah.
Mhm.
And then you have a cost of subsidies too,
Right.
where in the other model, we only had,
Right.
we only had revenue that we
Yeah.
gave to people.
So Noel, in the carbon price, can we go in and start carbon pricing 20 years later, maybe?
Oh,
You can do timing.
yeah, you can put the year that it starts and how long it takes to take effect and all that. It's in the model. Yeah, it's all in here. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
highly
Yeah.
it's highly configurable. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm wondering if you match that with the other stuff, then does it help them kind of like it a little better?
Yeah, I don't think any politicians don't like carbon pricing. Well, I should say that we had a lot of co-sponsors of our bill, so I guess we had enough of them on the bill, and we used to have them across the aisle on the bill too at one point. But yeah, at some point it became politically harder to do that in the last 10 years. But I guess yeah.
Just curious. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I want to do a
Play with
couple of
that,
other.
Well, and the other point, Noel, is that we're talking about global. So
Yeah,
when you talk about carbon pricing, this is carbon pricing worldwide.
that's correct. Yeah, that's assuming these policies are applied globally. Yes.
But we also haven't, I don't think, taken into consideration the benefits in healthcare, right?
Ah,
Like, there should be great savings in healthcare.
glad you brought that up. Let's look at impacts. Um,
Hmm.
we can look at there was one on additional deaths from extreme heat is an interesting one. You can see well, I can pop that out in a minute, but I'm going to go put the policies back in place, put a carbon price in, energy efficiencies, electrifications, and you can see now we've reduced deaths, and deaths also come with a lot of healthcare issues associated with them. But across the world, we've reduced deaths dramatically from just the heat scenario is one. And I'm going to show you another impact, which is air pollution by source. And this is a dramatic one. I'm going to go ahead and reset all my policies and just show you, like, this is from coal. This is air pollution by PM 2.5, and this is what causes asthma and heart disease and lung disease to a dramatic. Yep. And if you add a carbon price, just watch what that does.
Wow.
To the PM 2.5. So really coal is the driver and in PM 2.5 globally, but you can see there's going to be many lives saved, and just the quality of life and the healthcare costs will go down because we are dramatically cleaning the air by putting these policies in place. These are some of the really big impacts for that. Let me see what other impacts I wanted to hit on. Yep, I did energy cost. Oh, I would do sea level rise, deaths we did, air pollution we did. Yeah, and sea level rise is the other one, maybe not as relevant for where you are, but I'm sure you all visit places that are, you know, on the coast, and you have your favorite beach places. So let's do, go back to impacts and go to sea level rise. The flood risk map is what I'm going to bring up. And I'm going to put all those policies back in place again here, so we can kind of see. Let's just bring it up. Where does someone want to bring up a place in the world that they cherish that's along the coast, anywhere, and yeah, that we want to look at?
Anna Maria Island, Florida.
Anna Maria Island.
There you
There
go.
it is. All right, cool. All right, great. So you can see in current scenario, there's some, the blue is where there's an issue. I'm going to blow this map up here big in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and put our policies back in place. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and this, and this, this, and this, and this. Okay, so that's our 1.8 scenario, and then I'm going to make this bigger. I think I can view that larger. So okay, so this is Anna Maria Island. You can see the blue. You guys see the bigger map now?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, great. You can see the blue areas are those that are inundated by water, and the green areas is the land that's saved by all the policy actions that we made. Now you saw that most of it stays blue. And why is that? We got it down to 1.8 degrees Celsius, but yet we're still losing much of this land to the ocean. And the reason, you know, that is there's you know, a time factor. Like, we've already raised the temperature, and when you, I guess, put an ice cube on a plate and it's sitting in the, you know, the 60-degree air, it doesn't melt right away. It takes time. And so we've raised the temperature of the air in the ocean, and the ice is taking its time to melt, but it will melt. And so this model shows in the year 2100, this is where the impacts will be, but it shows a couple of other views that we can look here, because we also know that there's this thing called a storm that happens, and with that, a storm surge. So I'm going to put a storm surge in. We're in 2100, and I don't know what a good storm surge is. I know some of the storms that we've seen have 3 or 6 or even 10 feet of storm surge. And I think this is a meter, so we'll go with, you know, a meter, so 1 or 3. So let's say with a meter of storm surge, which is not that unusual. You can see the entire island's inundated. And you can see if we get a big storm, it would probably take much of this area as well. So that's a useful tool. And let's also then look at long-term. So long-term equilibrium is what I'm saying. When the ice has melted to match the new temperature of the Earth. Okay, so equilibrium, if you will. And let's see where that brings us. And this is sometimes the most scary one. So you can see how far inland, even with the policies that we have today, all this landmass is lost to the ocean, and all this landmass is lost. But we did save quite a bit of South Bradenton. But it's let me zoom out a little to show a bigger picture. You can see there's still a fairly dramatic impact due to sea level rise that's already baked in. The damage is already done. And I know that's a fairly depressing thing to recognize and determine. Like, even with all of those heroic actions that we took globally to reduce it to 1.8, we still have to plan to, you know, again, I'll say long-term equilibrium is likely hundreds of years in the future. So somewhere between the end of the century and hundreds of years past, but it still will happen. You know, this is fairly high confidence science in terms of where we will end up with equilibrium, because we've got so much data on, you know, the sea levels with different temperatures of, you know, the Earth over the past histories.
Okay, Noel, can you move to
Yeah.
This says show impact. Look at New York City.
Yep. Okay. Let's do. So this is New York. Yeah. This is, yeah, I know this area. So this Manhattan Island is not as bad as some of the other areas. You can see here's lower Manhattan. You lose a lot of the financial district and along here, but well, I guess here your Harlem as well gets hit pretty hard, but yeah. This area is really kind of interesting to me. Like when I found out how impactful it was in New Jersey across the river because of the low-lying areas. These are all basically wetlands that were filled in and developed. And so the wetlands are all going to be given back. And so, yeah, the long-term equilibrium for these areas like Hoboken is gone long-term. Yeah.
Mhm. A
And
lot of
much
Brooklyn.
yeah, a lot of Brooklyn, the airports. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And again, long-term equilibrium. Let me bring that back to our storm surge. So this is like a Sandy level storm surge. This is about a Sandy level storm surge in 2100. And you can see it's pretty impactful across the whole area. Yeah, I'm going to show you Philadelphia real quick because this is interesting because you don't think of Philadelphia as a coastline because it's not, but the Delaware River goes into the ocean, and the really interesting thing is when I go down and look, this is the Philadelphia airport right here. So this is 2100 with storm surge and with the Sandy, this whole area is gone. This is where the stadiums are, where the Eagles will play right here, and the Phillies, South Philadelphia. This is where Southwest. This is where I was born. So yeah, this whole area gets kind of inundated. And when I do also go to long-term equilibrium, like where will the ice land? And again, this is the most optimistic scenario we just built. We just solved all the world's problems with all our policies, and this is how much of Philadelphia will be lost permanently when the ice equilibrium happens. But we did save a bunch of South Philly. But you can see even inland, as inland as Philadelphia, there's dramatic effects, and this goes to like we need to do well. Again, this is far out to the future. Well, I guess this is not 2100 is not like we need to start like if you just look at like infrastructure investments, we need to become more resilient to these as well because the Philadelphia airport is right here, and yeah, are we going to either relocate that airport this century? Or we're going to have to build some big walls around it, right? This century. And those things are, projects that are a long time in the making. So yeah, there's a lot going on with oceans, and you could lose an afternoon in this tool if you really wanted to deep dive into that. So any other locations folks want to look at?
Curious to see Turks and Caicos Islands because they'll probably be completely gone. I don't know if you have data for the rest of the world, but you can do South Caicos or Providenciales.
Caicos.
CAICOS.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Turks and
Okay.
Caicos, first one right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's
The highest level in Turks and Caicos is about 150 feet. So
yeah.
and there goes your favorite destination on the left there, bottom left for cruise ships.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming Puerto Rico halfway is probably gone too.
Yeah. Where's that? Oh,
Man, Cuba is gone.
Okay, there's Puerto Rico.
Actually, Puerto Rico is not that bad, but Cuba has like a bunch on the south that is completely gone.
well, this is
South Florida.
Yes,
South
yeah,
South
Florida.
Florida is.
Yeah, that's already almost there. There's a lot of places that are already having problems with flooding.
Yeah, the long-term equilibrium for Florida is not a great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Noel, would you put in Louisville, Kentucky? I'm just curious if the river, if it has effects on it.
looks like you're good.
Oh, okay.
Well, and that makes me wonder, just in general, I mean, we're Kentucky folks, and how are we going to try to make the case for a member of Congress? I mean, I'm thinking heat, and I'm thinking crops.
I think the crop yields would be a good one, and the deaths by heat, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, crop yields. I didn't bring that one up, but
I mean, also just because we don't have, like the ocean creeping in, doesn't mean we're not gonna have a ton of floods like we've been having. So,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
also
yeah, right.
another issue that we're gonna solve.
Right, we'll keep the land, it just will get flooded a lot.
yeah.
And then dry
yeah.
out, and then get flooded a lot, and dry out.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
you can see that the decrease in crop yield from temperature is also pretty dramatic too. But our actions did have results. But if we do nothing, you can see the crop yield due to high temperature is it's huge. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, if you talk to somebody like Representative Comer, he will be really interested in this part of it.
Yeah. So yeah, how are folks feeling about what we talked about today?
I feel like the model's improved since the last time I ever spent time with it. I mean, there's a lot of research. I mean, you can go very deep on many subjects.
Yeah. Yeah, we just kind of touched the surface on how much you could learn from this and use it. So yeah. Was there anything that surprised folks?
No, my
What
takeaway
you-
from the original time I looked at it was you got to do everything, which I think is still a little bit of that story.
Yeah.
And that carbon pricing is probably the biggest lever if we can. That's a political lift more than it is anything else.
Yeah. Yep. Any other thoughts?
I enjoyed seeing all the different impact scenarios. I've seen the tool a couple different times, and usually seen just associated with the
Temperature.
CO2 emissions, so in the temperature. So both those two, but that's been about it. So
Yeah, the
I
impact can
appreciate
be
going
really
into
good.
it.
Sure.
Yeah, going into more of the detail on that.
Lot of detail in this, which we can use it.
Is this slide deck available for our use?
I can
Yeah, can you send it
out.
to me, Noel, and I'll
Sure.
I'll
Yeah,
get it
sure
up.
will. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it. Send it over. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah. Yep. So just a couple, yeah. So you guys hit on, there's no silver bullet. We need many actions. There's still possibility that the worst case futures, we can avoid the worst case futures. It requires keeping large amounts of fossil fuels in the ground. It's required. But there's a lot of co-benefits, right? Co-benefits like, the cleaner air, the less deaths, less human suffering in general. So yeah, that's it. So that's what I have. And are there any other questions or comments?
I just have
I-
a comment. I think,
Okay.
go ahead, Teresa.
No, you go first. Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is that I think the best thing that I take away from this is that you can, I didn't realize it had so many things that you can talk about. And when you're doing a presentation with a member of Congress, they will be the ones providing the input to this and seeing how this is being affected by the things that they think would fix the problem,
Yeah.
and what things are not really that effective.
Yeah.
So I think the good thing about it is that it's customizable to whoever is taking the presentation, because the things that they care about and the things that they think will make the changes, they will actually be able to see in real time when you do the adjustments, if it's gonna really do anything or if it's something that is really not that great.
If
Pam, you had something?
If you were making a presentation to a member of Congress when you did this, how much time do you need to allow for that? How much time do you need to ask for?
Yeah, you could do it in as short as half an hour. But if they really wanted to dive into understanding the tool, it could be longer. So it depends on how interactive they want to be and what they want to learn. So I would try to, find out like what are they trying to learn from it? What are their key questions? But yeah, I think we typically don't get more than half an hour from a staffer anyway. So we're pretty focused on getting to what they want to see within that time. Yeah, because I'm not necessarily teaching them how to use the tool per se, as getting right to the, answer to the questions that they have.
Mhm.
And then
And it's
I know,
mostly a staffer as opposed to a member, right?
I've only done it with staffers myself personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carmel, I know you've used the tool in presentations and in group gameplay and stuff. Did you want to tell people kind of what you've been doing with it?
I can, and I apologize for being late. I think you recorded this, correct?
I did, yeah. So
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have 3 main goals when we do our game, and we have a minimum of an hour and a half. It's kind of like a game show / trivia thing. It's got a feel like that. And our 3 main goals are: 1 is just to talk about climate change and the talks and the parts of all that's involved, all the moving pieces that are shown on this En-ROADS thing. The second is, as a good CCL member, is to introduce them to the concept of carbon fee and dividend. And the third thing is to introduce them to this tool in a way that makes them want to ask questions, that wants them to look at it again, and just introduce it to them. And it's an awful lot, but whenever we've done it, we've had really good feedback from this because it's fun and lots of people talk about lots of things. And anyway, do we go way into all this stuff? Not a whole lot. We just want to introduce them to it. And and this is Kentucky, so we want to be able to talk about it and show people how easy it is. And our tagline is, you think, you know more than you think, you care more than you know, and you can make a difference. And if those are the things that we try and get across, because a lot of people will say, well, I can't talk about climate change. Yes, you can. And we break it up into places where they absolutely know more than they think. And then, well, I don't care. Well, yes, you care more than you know. And then we talk about what you can do. And they get points at this thing. It's a team thing. And they get points for registering to vote, or they get points for sending a letter to Congress right now. We used to do a presentation where we inspired them to call Congress or to sign up for the monthly call, but we didn't know if they actually did any of that or not. So we give them points during the game to either register to vote or make a contact with Congress through, and we usually do it, we show them a way they can do it through the CCL website. So, and if they've done it, I tell them, I don't care what you tell them, you can just tell them hello. You can say, I'm interested in climate change. You can tell them I'm interested in immigration. You can tell them whatever they want. And the point is, we want them to make contact through this vehicle several times so that when somebody else says, call your Congress, like, oh, I can do that. I've done that 6 times last night, So anyhow, just to show them a method of doing that so it's easy. And they're doing it for the points, which they do. And I've had 18-year-olds register to vote. We did this at Western or in Bowling Green, and we had like 7 or 8 18-year-olds register to vote right then. So anyway, that's what we've been.
That's great.
Awesome.
That sounds good. I love how this tool can be used in so many ways. I saw Beth use it in a presentation a couple of weeks ago at Northern Kentucky University, and she didn't go through a whole lot, but she just gave them, here's this tool if you ever want to plan it. Here's a couple of things, and it led into what she was doing. So good. And I know a few of you have to run. I'm just excited that Noel, that you gave us this opportunity. So we talk about how we can use this possibly with members of Congress, how we can use it in presentations, how we can maybe even start referencing it in different, in many different ways that we can. So good. So anyone else with your questions quickly for Noel? And then Noel, I'm sorry, thank to you.
Yeah, I will leave it with, if anyone ever does want to do a presentation to a community group or introduce to a staffer or member of Congress, there's now a group within CCL that is exists just for that purpose, including myself, and I've done it for other groups and other members of Congress. So you don't have to go and get certified or become an ambassador yourself. You
Mhm.
just got to make the connections and bring in one of the folks that have been through the training, and they'd be more than happy to do it with you.
That's
I-
awesome.
That prompts a quick question for me. I mean, do they offer certification and training? Is that still an
Yeah.
ongoing thing?
Absolutely. They were called ambassadors. If you go to the Inroads website, you can go through the ambassador training. It's a series of short courses that you would take. I think it's like 7 or 8 courses. And then there's some other things like a short test. And then they want you to practice it and show that you've practiced it. And then you become an ambassador. Yeah.
That's good. And Pam, are you an ambassador? Officially?
I completed the training. I
Okay.
haven't presented yet, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. On your way.
Presented, yeah.
That's cool.
Great.
All right.
Cool. Well, I will send an email to everybody who was on this call with, if you don't mind, Noel, send me the slide deck. If that'd be great. And then you get the
Will.
slide deck, and I'll put in there the John has just given us the ambassador thing on community, and I'll make sure that gets in there too. So
Is there access to the recording of all the stuff that I missed?
yeah. So John, do I give that to you to put up, and then I'll give you the link too?
Sure.
How about I'll put that all in one email, and then we'll get it up on, you have a YouTube channel, right, for Appalachia, and I can all right.
Yep.
So I'll get it to John so he can put it on YouTube, and that way you're not getting it, through email, but you can get the link to it, and then we'll have all 3 of those components and a follow-up to everybody who's made it. And then please feel free in your chapters, if people say, oh, I missed that meeting, I really wanted to go, make sure just forward this on to them if you don't mind. So, because I know not everyone can make this time and day work. So great. All
Thank you,
right,
Noel.
Noel, thank you
Thanks,
so
all.
much. You guys are great. I'm so glad we could have such a big audience on a Monday night. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And it was really inspiring. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Good to
Fantastic,
see you. Thank you.
fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Bye.